The town of Millfield had always been a quiet, peaceful place, nestled in the rolling hills of rural Vermont. But lately, something had changed. People were disappearing, and the ones who turned up again were never the same. It started with old Mrs. Jenkins, who had gone missing while out on her daily walk. When she was found, she was barely alive, her body covered in strange symbols and markings. She died a few days later, never having regained consciousness. Then there was Billy Thompson, a popular kid at Millfield High School. He had disappeared while out hiking with friends, and his body was found in the woods, drained of blood and mutilated in ways that made no sense. The town was in a state of panic. No one felt safe, and the police seemed powerless to stop the killings. That's when a group of high school students decided to take matters into their own hands. They were tired of being afraid, and they were determined to find out what was happening in their town. "We have to do something," said Jake, the leader of the group. "We can't just sit back and wait for the killer to come for us next." The other students nodded in agreement. They were scared, but they were also angry. They were determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. They started by talking to the people who had survived the attacks. They learned that all of the victims had been in the woods before they disappeared, and that they had all reported seeing strange lights and hearing strange noises. It was starting to look like whatever was happening in Millfield was connected to the woods. The students decided to venture into the woods themselves, hoping to find some clues. They were armed with flashlights and walkie-talkies, and they were determined to be prepared for anything. As they made their way deeper into the woods, they began to hear the strange noises that the victims had described. It sounded like chanting, or maybe singing. They couldn't tell for sure. Then they saw the lights. They were bright and ethereal, and they seemed to be moving towards the students. The students froze, unsure of what to do. They wanted to run, but they were too afraid to move. Suddenly, the lights stopped. The chanting stopped. There was silence. Then, a figure appeared out of the darkness. It was a man, but he was unlike anyone the students had ever seen. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and piercing eyes. He was wearing a cloak made of animal skins, and he had a strange symbol painted on his forehead. "Who are you?" asked Jake, his voice shaking. The man didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at the students. "We're not here to hurt you," said Lucy, taking a step forward. "We just want to know what's going on." The man still didn't speak. He just stared at them, his eyes seeming to look right through them. It was then that the students noticed the others. There were more figures standing behind the man, all of them dressed in similar cloaks and all of them carrying knives. The students backed away, realizing that they were in danger. But it was too late. The man and his followers closed in on them, their knives raised. The students fought back as best they could, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. They were dragged off into the darkness, never to be seen again. In the days that followed, the town of Millfield was in a state of mourning. As the students were dragged off into the darkness, they had no idea what their fate would be. They were thrown into a makeshift prison, a dank and musty underground chamber. They were kept there for days, with no food or water. They were weak and disoriented, barely able to stand. It was then that they were brought before the man they had encountered in the woods, the one with the piercing eyes and the animal skin cloak. He was the leader of the group, and he had a proposition for the students. "You have been chosen," he said, his voice cold and unemotional. "You are to be the sacrifice for the good of the tribe." The students were confused. What tribe? What sacrifice? The leader explained that he and his followers were the last remnants of an ancient Native American tribe, one that had been driven to extinction centuries ago. They had managed to survive in secret, hidden in the woods and surviving off the land. But their survival had come at a price. They had made a pact with the spirits, agreeing to make regular sacrifices in exchange for their protection. And now, It was time for another sacrifice. The students were horrified. They had no intention of being sacrificed, and they were determined to find a way out. They searched their prison for a way to escape, but it was no use. The walls were solid stone, and there was no way out. As the time for the sacrifice drew near, the students knew that they had to do something drastic. They decided to try to appeal to the leader's humanity, hoping to persuade him to let them go. "Please," begged Lucy, tears streaming down her face. "We have families. We have lives. We don't want to die." The leader hesitated. He could see the fear in the students' eyes, and he knew that what he was asking of them was not easy. "I am sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But the pact must be honored. The spirits demand it." The students were out of options. They knew that their fate was sealed. But just as the leader was about to give the order for the sacrifice to begin, there was a loud noise from above. It sounded like footsteps, and it was getting closer. The leader and his followers looked up, alarmed. They had thought that they were alone in the woods, but it seemed that they were wrong. There was a loud crash as the door to the underground chamber was thrown open. A group of armed men burst into the room, shouting orders and pointing their weapons. The leader and his followers were quickly overpowered, and the students were freed. They were rushed out of the woods and into the waiting arms of their relieved families. It was later revealed that the students had been found thanks to a tip from an anonymous source. No one knew who had alerted the authorities, but the students were grateful to whoever it was. They returned to their normal lives, trying to put the experience behind them. But they knew that they would never forget what had happened in the woods of Millfield. And they knew that they had come closer to death than they ever wanted to again. The end. Like and subscribe.